Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Ready? 1. You will do this 4 times with the left, 4 with the right, then 8 times with both, then repeat.
It's Wednesday night, kids, and that means it's time for the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour. Jim Sarantias from the Fantasy Greek joining myself, Keith Grieve from 87sportsfans.com. Jim, happy Wednesday.
Hey, happy hump day to you, Keith. How's it going?
Fantastic. We are going to continue our Path to the Draft series to get you ready for your fantasy football draft. We don't do it for us. We do it for you. We're going to cover the running back landscapes. And, you know, Jim, traditionally, running back is your focus area, but we keep hearing about the NFL kind of going to more of a passing league. So can you give us the overall landscape? What are we looking for? Is running back still the position of emphasis? And what's the overall landscape of the running back position as far as the draft goes?
Well, in general, Keith, you've probably got a good dozen running backs that are going to be your top go-to guys. Then you've got another dozen, maybe half are clearly going to be running back RB2s in fantasy football, and then half of those could be players that, you know, they look like RB2s, everything's indicating RB2s, but it's possible that by the time your draft rolls around, you might even be looking at them as flex plays. You know, the day of the premier running back is just long gone in terms of, I mean, it used to be a majority of the teams. You knew their number one running back would be one of your fantasy football guys. You knew that your first 2 picks, for example, should be running backs. Now that just doesn't seem to be the case. Wide receivers can play as well as running backs. However, this still doesn't mean you shouldn't draft a running back in the first round. In fact, most people will draft a running back in the first round, especially in the front half of the draft. In the back half of the draft, you could go for one of the top receivers and get yourself still a top running back in round 2 at the beginning of that round. Other than that, I would say that 3 out of your first 6 picks will be running backs, and they should be. And if they're not, you'll probably be in a lot of trouble by the time you're done drafting.
How much does what do you think has been more of a detriment to the running back position from a fantasy football standpoint? The evolution of the passing game or the RBC?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, you like to say it's a little bit of both. To see an offense throw the football 600 times doesn't shock anymore. It's not something that was just limited to a handful of offenses. You're just not as surprised. In the running back by committee, you know, look, there's a lot of good running backs now. And a lot of coaches recognize that not all running backs are created equal, but that there are running backs that are very similar and as good as the next guy. And they're willing to give them all a shot. Many of them specialize in receiving, catching the football out of the backfield, while others are just strictly good in between the tackles. So at the end of the day, Keith, I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. I knew I had to throw that out there because it seems like, you know, it used to be like back in the day, LaDainian Tomlinson, for instance, going back like, you know, 8 years now. LaDainian Tomlinson, and there was like a string of just like running backs like after that you had to have. And now there's a lot of teams, a lot of guys that they might be the lead ball carrier, but they just split carry so much, so it kind of brings into question whether or not you should use a number 1 pick on them. But let's get into the nuts and bolts of this, and the leadoff running back on our list to talk about is the rookie Melvin Gordon.
And really, Keith, I would like to package Melvin with another rookie, and that's Amir Abdullah. I think what's interesting of these rookies, we're going to talk about the top 10, but these two are borderline top 10s. And they're interesting insofar as they're rookies, but they're also at the right place at the right time. Melvin Gordon's joining a Chargers team that has been desperately looking for a running back 2 seasons ago when they had the benefit of a healthy Ryan Matthews. It helped their offense just flow so much better, especially in the passing game, where last year, even though Phillip Rivers threw the football a ton, as the season wore on, he started to struggle and he started to wear. Melvin Gordon will help this Chargers team put a better package on the field, a better product on the field, and he certainly is in line for 1,400 yards, 1,400 all-purpose yards, and anywhere from 7 to 9 TDs from my perspective. Then you have Amir Abdullah, who is sort of in the same place as Melvin Gordon, but probably, I mean, Melvin Gordon's got a couple of running backs behind him that are better receivers than probably he is, will get work in that way. But Amir Abdullah is in a situation where Joique Bell is coming off 2 off-season surgeries, one to his shoulder, one to his ankle. The guy doesn't look like he's practiced much, if any, this offseason. So you have to question Joique Bell's durability, whether he'll even be ready in week 1. And I think Amir Abdullah is also in the right place at the right time, but not because of the competition from multiple running backs or other running backs that do certain things better than him. It's just sheer numbers. And I think Amir Abdullah is more of an all-purpose running back as a rookie right now, where Joique Bell is pretty much strictly an in-between-the-tackles kind of runner. So if you can get Gordon and Abdullah, likely both in the second or third round of your fantasy drafts, feel good about it because these guys are borderline top 10.
Wow. I was toying with Melvin Gordon and everything, just being a rookie and everything like that, but he's very tempting. Very, very tempting, especially if you're in a league like my one that I keep talking about, the Dynasty League, where you're pretty much drafting rookies and young guys. He's definitely a guy that's tantalizing, if you will be.
Tantalizing, ooh.
Yeah, I don't usually like to use those words talking about other men, but that's we'll use it in this example here. So, next up on the rundown is Chicago Bears running back Matt Forte. Chicago, obviously, with a lot of change in the front office and on the coaching staff, and also a new philosophy, supposedly. New head coach John Fox is saying all the right things that Bears fans want to hear, and also Matt Forte owners, is that he wants to get the team back to that kind of smash-mouth, run-first football. And you see where John Fox has been in the past. Denver, it seems to be a running back. It hasn't always been the same running back. Stepped up and had a decent year. In Carolina, D'Angelo Williams, I believe, was that D'Angelo Williams, or was that I forget.
I believe he was there when both D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart were there. And rushed for 1,000 yards each one season.
I'm getting my eras confused, but his running backs seem to do pretty well. And now Forte, who has now come out and said, I don't want to catch 100 balls like he did last year. What's your take on Matt Forte and Chicago's offense going forward this year?
Well, Matt Forte should want to catch as many footballs as they'll give to him, given that he's at the tail end of his career. But the first thing is, last season, Matt Forte put up 1,800 all-purpose yards, and he did that pretty much based on 100-plus receptions, which is just unheard of for a running back. You just don't expect 100 receptions this year. I don't even think you'd expect 60% of that. He'll probably be more like 40, 45. So I like Matt Forte sort of as this 1,400-yard or all-purpose yard running back with the ability to score six to 8 touchdowns. And I think we're going to see some work for the other backup running backs. There's no reason why a Kadeem Carey shouldn't get some work, why Jacquizz Rodgers shouldn't get some work. And who knows, maybe we'll even see a little bit of Jeremy Langford. But the reality is Matt Forte, you still got to like him. He's going to present some pretty decent value late in the first round, early in the second round.
Yeah, I got a feeling. Forte is going to be huge this year, even bigger than last year. Catching 100 balls is he's at the record for receptions by a running back last year. So I think fantasy wise, it's going to even be a bigger year.
You're kidding, right?
No, I'm not. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Okay.
I am telling you. Me, the guy that whose team name is Cuddy Does It. Chicago's doing big things this year. Big things.
And what you just said, that's all I'm saying.
All right, moving on. DeMarco Murray, last year's NFL leading rusher, was a free agent and was wooed by the cross-division rival Philadelphia Eagles. A little unheard of, but not out of the realm of impossibility these days with free agency and players free to go wherever they may. So now he goes to a team that had a pretty good running back last year in LaShawn McCoy, who put up a pretty successful season, the last 2 seasons anyway, in Philadelphia. Chip Kelly does things a little differently out there in Philadelphia. Are you think DeMarco Murray is better fantasy-wise, stays the same, or takes a little bit of a hit going to Philly?
Oh, he'll definitely take a hit. Last season, he had 2,000 all-purpose yards on 392 touches. That is obscene. It should be illegal. But, hey, if you had DeMarco Murray last year, he was a godsend and probably helped you get to your fantasy football championship. The reality is with Ryan Matthews in the backfield and even Darren Sproles working in on some passing downs, DeMarco Murray should see a huge chunk of his touches fall away. I'm estimating he'll have around 250 rushes, maybe a few receptions. Again, this puts him at about 1,500 yards, puts him at about 6 to 8 touchdowns. We shouldn't see the same thing that happened last year. I mean, I think you would agree with me if that happened again. No one would see that coming. So you have to like DeMarco Murray, but you have to like him sort of, again, at the end of round 1, beginning of round 2 in fantasy drafts.
Yeah. Yeah, he's I don't know, a lot. You know, that Dallas offensive line was just fantastic.
That is absolutely true.
Last year, and I've said it multiple times. You can have and I'm not saying this about that DeMarco Murray is mediocre, but you can have a mediocre running back do great things behind a fantastic line. And so going to Philadelphia, I'm not so sure I feel as comfortable in Philadelphia's offensive line as I do Dallas's just at this point yet. And they may prove me wrong, but I would tend to agree with you just about him taking a little bit of a hit. So last year there was a running back that kind of came out of nowhere, who was a lifelong backup, and due to situations out of everybody's control, he ended up being in a prominent role on his new team and kind of ran away with the show in the AFC, and that is Justin Forsett. What's your take on him this year?
You know, Justin Forsett is a player that people are undervaluing right now. I mean, here's a player who, as you said, through circumstances, ended up carrying the load for the Ravens, put up 1,500 all-purpose yards, which is just amazing for a guy that, I mean, this last year was basically his second best season over his career, and he's actually towards the end of his career, coming in at 29 years old. So, you know, you kind of look at him and say, well, he's capable. And now he gets Mark Trestman as his offensive coordinator, who, as we were just discussing, had the football thrown to Matt Forte over 100 times, setting a league record. So you start looking at this and you see, well, the guy already is capable of 1,500 all-purpose yards and what was an offense that did favor the running back. Well, here again, he's in an offense that favors the running back. I like the 1,500 all-purpose yards as a floor. But in PPR leagues, this guy should be sky's the limit. I mean, he could really put it on. Cutting against that, you know, cutting against it is the fact that he's towards the end of his career, and you know, you just sort of have to be a little bit conservative in your selection of him. But I still like him as number one late in that first round. And right now, what's insane is he's actually going in most fantasy drafts at the end of the second round, beginning of the third round. So if you can wait out that long and have Justin Forsett as your second running back, that would be obscene.
Really? Second to third round for Forsett?
Yeah. He's not getting any love.
Do these leagues have any openings? Because I think I might be able to.
This is the average draft position. So it's an average of the times that he's been drafted, and there you go.
Can we speculate as what you think people might be thinking about that?
Well, I think what's happening is they're taking all the names in terms of running backs and all the names in terms of wide receivers, and he's just getting pushed down.
This guy, for all his years in the league, he's got a lot of tread on the tires because he was backing up in Seattle for so long. You know, and now he finally gets an offense that is working for him, and people are going to just kind of take that for granted, or don't think he's a one trick pony, not gonna be able to do it 2 years in a row? Ray Rice ain't coming back, kids. I don't know what you're all thinking, but
I would agree. I mean, Javorius Allen or Buck Allen is the young rookie that they drafted, so you may see him get some work. But I really feel that the Ravens and Mark Trestman will stick with the veteran, and as long as he doesn't get hurt, I mean, he should be carrying that football the entire way, and especially, they've got Steve Smith at wide receiver, Rashard Perryman at wide receiver, Marlon Brown at wide receiver, Max Williams at tight end. It's not to say they don't have guys that can catch the football and work in the passing game, but you got to think they're going to lean a little bit on their running backs at times.
Agreed completely.
Yeah.
Another running back that came on the scene was actually the third running back through the turnstiles for the Denver Broncos, and that was C.J. Anderson, and he had a fantastic season. I rode him all the way to my championship, by the way, BT Dubs. So now they get a new head coach, Gary Kubiak, Peyton Manning, another year, hanging up on the rack. What's your take on Anderson? Can he repeat what he did last year?
C.J. Anderson is in the best position to just have a breakout season in that Mike Kubiak offense that has made stars of Justin Forsett, who we just spoke of, as well as Arian Foster. I mean, the sky's the limit with this guy, and to see him go for 1,500 yards and double-digit TDs would not surprise. Right now he's not projected for that, but he certainly is capable of that. His ceiling can be that high. He's currently going late in first-round drafts, in the first round of most drafts, projected to have an average of 15.3 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues. I like him. I think he's solid, and for those of you who are boo-hooing that you've got a draft pick in the latter part of the first round, don't. C.J. Anderson should fall right in your lap.
Yeah, you look at what he's done. Kubiak's done with Arian Foster, with Forsett. It just stands to be that Anderson falls in line with that.
You're preaching to the choir, brother. I agree with you.
I don't like it when we agree on so much.
I know, but we're talking top 10. I mean, while there could be a difference of opinion, these are top 10 running backs, and people shouldn't be complaining about getting any one of these guys in their fantasy drafts.
Okay. So, of course, we're going to talk about Adrian Peterson. And, of course, everyone should be familiar, if you're a football fan, with why he sat out last season. No need to go into it now. But here he is back. He got a year rest. Should be fresh. And the difference this time around in Minnesota is that they've got a nice young quarterback there that I'm not going to say may kind of be coming into something, decent there in Minnesota. The last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, Teddy Bridgewater's passer rating was second only to Tony Romo. So things might be turning up in Minnesota. Adrian Peterson has been the bell cow running back there for years. He's able to handle the load. He's able to carry the offense. But what if there's a passing game that defenses have to respect? Jim, what's your take on the Vikings and Adrian Peterson?
Well, good for the Vikings that they're able to get Adrian Peterson for another year, especially coming off a season where he only played in one game. Hopefully the wheels are rested and fully treaded, because they're going to ride this guy. And the only thing that you might be concerned about is the fact that he is 30 years old. Everybody's betting on the idea that he is an athletic freak and that hitting 30 is not going to affect him. I'm not saying that it will, but I'm not saying that it won't. You can only look at this in terms of, is he healthy? Yes. Is he in great shape? Yes. Is he going to be productive based on how they're going to use him? And the answer is yes. What's I think a little bit shocking is that in many leagues he's being taken as the first overall pick. I don't know that I would agree with that. I like some of the other running backs and what they have to bring to the table as overall number ones. I think there is some risk to taking Peterson, but you still got to like him amongst the top 10, even right in that top 5, which I think is up for debate. View Adrian Peterson as a player that should be getting you close to 16 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues, and just cross your fingers and say, Adrian, stay healthy.
Yeah, he should have a monster year. I really think. I don't know about how many more after this, but this year, absolutely, you can bank.
Well, and that's my issue, I suppose, Keith. Everybody keeps saying, "Well, I don't know how much after this season." Okay, but eventually he's got to slow down.
Right.
And do you honestly think that at 30 he could produce 2,000 all-purpose yards? I would say probably not. Have we possibly seen his best year already? I would say probably yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I hesitate to, when everybody talks about, we don't know about next year. Well, let's look of this year in terms of his overall portfolio, if you will. And that's why I sit here and look at him and go, he's a top 5 guy, top 6 guy. Past that, I don't know. We'll see.
He just makes so much sense sometimes. It's kind of scary, honestly.
That's right.
All right. The other end of the DeMarco Murray roster swap, roster movement, roster transition, if you will, was the outgoing running back in Philadelphia, LeSean McCoy. And he gets traded to the Buffalo Bills, which was a little bit shocking because, even with C.J. Spiller's status at the time up for grabs on his way to New Orleans eventually, they still had Fred Jackson there. So they ended up getting a running back like LeSean McCoy for Kiko Alonso, which was a good linebacker in his own right, but it seems like it was an awfully light price. I'm sure, and I think there was some draft picks thrown in there as well. But Shady McCoy in Buffalo on an offensive line that has been producing decent running games the last couple of years, if my mind does not fail me here. What's your projection here for LeSean McCoy?
I love LeSean McCoy. I think the sky's the limit with him. He is right now earmarked to run until his legs fall off. I mean, Rex Ryan has made no bones about it. He's not hiding that fact from anyone. He is legitimately a player that you can see touching the football 350 or more times this coming season, and I think that gives him such huge upside. Obviously, tempering it a little bit is the offensive line of the Buffalo Bills and sort of being in that Buffalo offense. But when I look at the picture overall, do I want a running back that's going to touch the football 350 plus times or 300 times? My answer is 350 plus times. So, I love LeSean McCoy in that top 5. He's really being underrated by people right now. His average draft position is literally at the end of the first round in 12-team leagues. He's a player that should be producing 17 fantasy points per week for you. And, I mean, God bless you if you're in that top 5, 6, and he falls to you and you get him. Hell, in some leagues, you can get him in the second, third round. So, I mean, if you just believe that he's good and you should go get him, go get him. If you want to wait and see if he's going to be around in the second or third round, wait. But one way or another, he's going to be a top running back this year.
Yeah, that's, some disturbing comments about the Buffalo Bills quarterback situation yesterday by General Manager Doug Whaley, likening the situation at training camp to quote-unquote quarterback purgatory. The three-headed monster of E.J. Manuel, Matt Castle, and Tyrod Taylor not being everything he hoped it would be.
Yeah, here, not only the offensive line, but tempering McCoy's outlook is the fact, will there be a passing game in Buffalo? And the Bills really need to just settle that down and get somebody in there that, they're like, this is our guy. They've got so many weapons on this team. If you look at their offensive playmakers, this team is stacked.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, you got McCoy, Sammy Watkins. I'm blanking out now, and they're off.
Robert Woods.
Robert Woods, yeah.
The tight end from the Dolphins. Charles Clay. And then obviously, they got some playmakers that, guys that could be the third, the slot receiver, all of them good wide receivers. I mean, this team is stacked, and they need to get somebody in there that's going to get the football into their hands and just let them go.
Marquise Goodwin and Percy Harvin came over from the Jets. And who knows what he's got left.
Oh, Percy Harvin, yeah. Oh my God.
But yeah, there are options away outside of the quarterback to make you excited about the Buffalo Bills this year.
Absolutely. Who's it going to be? I heard somebody say, "Oh, Tyrod Taylor." Okay. EJ Manuel. Okay. Matt Castle. Okay. Well, just somebody.
Right. So pick the guy that's least likely to throw interceptions, and you'll probably be okay. One would think. Well, you cut out bad there. What'd you say? So you just cut out bad again, like back to back.
How's that possible?
I don't know. It's like a net fart or something.
Okay, let me try one more time. LaShawn McCoy is going to be a great weapon out of the backfield in the passing game.
Perfect. Oh my God, it was so crystal clear.
There you go.
Okay. Yay, us. But I agree. Whether it's by a design play or just as an escape valve, I depending on how long the signal caller holds the ball, LaShawn McCoy should be en route for a monster year as well. All right, the almost two-time world champions, the Seattle Seahawks, the former Buffalo Bills running back that now is the Seahawks running back, Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch to me is the boulder from Indiana Jones, rolling down, just unstoppable. When he gets his head of steam, nobody can stop him. But he's getting a little long in the tooth, not the gold tooth, but long in the tooth. What do you think that Marshawn Lynch is on pace for this year? Well, what can we expect from Marshawn Lynch in 2015?
He's another running back that should pace for 1,500 all-purpose yards, and more importantly, even if he doesn't hit 1,500, he should be hitting double-digit TDs. That's what he means to this team. They're going to use him until he, injures himself or just can't run anymore. I mean, that's it. And because of that, and we've seen him do this. And every time we think Marshawn Lynch is done, he just comes back for more. So, do you bet against that? I wouldn't bet against that. I like him as the number 4 running back in the upcoming fantasy drafts, and I think that's how he should be drafted. He brings a lot of credibility to the table just based on his body of work.
I totally agree. I don't understand how you can't ignore him. And Russell Wilson, for all of the targets that everyone's saying are going to go to Jimmy Graham this year and things like that, at the end of the day, that offense is driven by Marshawn Lynch. And you just ride him.
It's based. The entire offense is based on a power running game.
Yeah. So, and he doesn't sub out all that often. So he's the guy that you want on your roster.
Absolutely, without question.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the frozen tundra. Second-year player Eddie Lacy for the Green Bay Packers seemed to, get stronger as the year went on. But I didn't see the Packers really run the ball all that much, or as much as I would have liked them to as a fan. Not that I'm a Packers fan. Do not misunderstand me. But as a football fan. So what are we looking for from Eddie Lacy here?
Eddie Lacy has... And I have to credit the analysis that Jim Widener did for the FantasyGreek.com because I think he hit it right on the head. And that last season we really saw a player mature quite quickly in his second year as a pro into a 3-down back. If he had not been injured his rookie season for a game, we'd have back-to-back 1,500 all-purpose yards for Eddie Lacy. I forget how many touchdowns he has, but I mean, let's say it's 8, let's say it's 10, whatever the case. The reality is he is a key part of the Packers offense, despite the fact that they throw the football an awful lot. And we should see more of the same. He is just a very consistent go-to guy, which is in part why some people are taking him as a number 1 overall pick, who seems to be able to handle the battering that he's been getting at the pro level. So I like Lacy as the 3rd overall pick, and some people might say he should be number 1, number 2, and I suppose there's always a difference of opinion on that, and this year it definitely seems to be the case. But at number 3, he's a really good safe pick.
Okay. In Kansas City, Jamal Charles has kind of been on everybody's radar.
Wait, that's it? You're just moving on?
Oh, I agree with it. I agree. Again, I agree with everything you're saying. If I don't have a counterpoint, then we just beat it to death, right?
Usually we're arguing like a married couple, so that's why this is so strange.
Yeah, but like you said, it's the top 10 running backs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jamal Charles in Kansas City. Now he's been at the top of everybody's wish list since he came into the league, pretty much. And now with Alex Smith at quarterback, who tends to play things a little conservative, it seems to me that that would only play more into Charles' value going forward. But what's your take on Kansas City? They've gone through a little bit of turnover.
Well,
on the roster.
I mean, in terms of their offense, this is still an offense that's built around Jamal Charles, which is what makes him such a high draft pick. Last year, I think he touched the football just 209 times, which was, if not a career low, was towards the bottom of the amount of touches he typically gets in his career. We won't see that again. I mean, he had some injuries last year. He had to fight through, so that held him back as well. This year, good health provided. I mean, we should see a player putting up the 1,500 yards, double-digit TDs. He's still young. He's still fully capable. So to consider him in the top 5 and towards the very top of drafts absolutely makes sense.
Okay. I just looking at. I don't know if I'm, and I know he did well in Philadelphia, but Jeremy Maclin and this offense.
That's a different God. That's our next show.
Yeah, I know. DeAnthony Thomas. I'm looking at you're looking at the Kansas City offense as a whole. What does it stand to do? Is there enough distractions to keep defenses from trying to focus on Jamal Charles and limit his damage? And I don't know if I can say that. I mean, Travis Kelce is as good a tight end as there is in the league now. Maclin had a great year last year. After that, on wide receiver, they're pretty thin. I don't know.
Well, that's a battle that remains to be seen. It remains to be seen whether Frankie Hammond might step up, Junior Hemingway, Albert Wilson. I mean, those are the 3 guys whose names come up as potentially being the next second, the second wide receiver on this team, and that really is going to be dependent on what kind of quarterback Alex Smith is. I mean, with Jeremy Maclin, the offense should open up, but you're not really hearing too much of that, and I suppose seeing is believing. I mean, there's a player that would get me nervous to draft. It's Jeremy Maclin. But in terms of the offense and what it's built around, I mean, 2 seasons ago, Jamal Charles was awesome. And he was awesome because he is the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Right.
If you go by the depth chart at ourlads.com, 2 out of the top 6 wide receivers are undrafted college free agents on the Chiefs depth chart. So
crazy.
It is what it is, kind of on that. Yeah. All right, and another top runner from last on our roster to talk about, but it's an interesting subject to talk about because he's suspended for the first 2 games, and that's Pittsburgh Steelers' Le'Veon Bell. He may be, in my opinion, the number 1 back in all of fantasy football if he was playing for 16 games. But does the suspension take away from where you draft him, or do you draft him and just say, well, I got to go get his backup?
I think it might affect it a little bit in standard leagues, that non-PPR. But in PPR, I mean, he is heads and above the best running back on the board. And even though you'll miss him for the first 2 games, he'll come back with a vengeance. And here's the example that I'll give you, or the comparison. Jamal Charles, who we just got done talking about, is projected to average 18.3 fantasy points in PPR leagues. 18.3 per game in a full season.
Wow.
In just 14 games, Le'Veon Bell is projected at 22.5.
Wow.
I mean, that's almost that is more than 4 points. So, it was tougher to call him a number 1 draft pick, when the suspension was talked about at 4 games or 3 games, because if you lose 3 or 4 games in fantasy football, I think you're done, or close to being done. But the 2 games now, it's kind of like, well, we're going to think, it's just not as big of a deal. I mean, the first 2 games are sort of finding out your roster anyway, and you get him back in week 3, and you get a whole ton of production out of him. A whole ton of production.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't sway anybody. 2 games is nothing, but you look at D'Angelo Williams as his backup, just go ahead and go grab him. And if you're an owner, and if you're in a keeper league, or if you're watching somebody else draft Le'Veon Bell, I would absolutely draft D'Angelo Williams at one point before that owner has a chance to get him, to use him as trade bait. But that's just me.
Yeah, guys like you, I don't respect that at all.
No, I there's certain aspects of my fantasy football season that I just pile players up just to mind screw with everybody.
But here's the thing: I would counsel the person to not take, because a person will hang D'Angelo Williams out there and ask for way too much. I always say no, because within a week, D'Angelo Williams will be on the waivers.
Right.
So anyway.
Strike while the iron's hot. Strike while the iron is hot.
So that's our top 10. That's Keith.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, that's our top 10.
That is it. That is our top 10, folks. You can head to thefantasygreek.com for all of your in-depth fantasy football information as you get closer and closer to your draft. Next week, wide receivers.
And Keith, I figure we do have what? We have how long? 15 minutes?
Yeah, like 20 minutes.
How long?
20 minutes. We blew through
20 minutes. So why don't we take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up with the Arian Foster and whatnot.
If you got any questions, 585-633-7487, 585-633-7487, or tweet your questions with the hashtag AskTFG. You're listening to the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour on Late Night Sports Radio.
With lust for the touch of your hand, I hate to always be
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
The Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour. We got about 17 minutes left to go in the program. We're going to open up, if you got any phone calls or any questions you want to call in, 585-633-7487 is the number, 585-633-7487, or you can tweet your questions with the hashtag AskTFG, and we will answer your questions on the air. But until said questions come through, we were talking during the break about some other interesting running backs outside the top 10 that might pique your interest if you're a fantasy owner. And the first one that I want to...
Well, hang on, Keith. Before we get to that, shouldn't we talk about something else?
Oh, yeah. There's this fantasy guide that like Jim puts out that's just absolutely fantastic.
There we go.
Jim, where can they find the link to procure one for themselves? Absolutely.
There's two places you could go to. The first one is thefantasygreek.com, and the second place you could go right to the source, Amazon.com. When you get to Amazon search engine, type in the Fantasy Greek Draft Guide, and it'll take you right to the guide itself, which you can purchase in hard copy or in Kindle. I'm sure you're wondering, well, maybe not, but one of the features that we like about the guide is even though it's in print and eventually rankings will change, things will change, we update it online at the Fantasy Greek in our Skybox subscription area. And if you purchase the draft guide, you get the Skybox for free. It is typically on its own $17.99, and you get it for free. So get out there, get yourself a draft guide, and be a part of the Fantasy Greek family, your second opinion for your fantasy football instinct.
You rolled that little line right off the tongue. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
It was wonderful, really.
Oh, and you know what? We because you wrote a little article for the draft guide, the top 10 storylines.
I did.
Very well done. And we are the number one release in fantasy sports on Amazon.com.
Come on, really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Not that didn't totally expect it, but that's fantastic.
Now we're working on being number one in sales.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway. So, all right. So the first player that not in the top 10 that is intriguing to me would be Lamar Miller, running back for the Miami Dolphins. What can we expect out of Miami this year?
Well, from the looks of it, I mean, Lamar Miller is clearly the favorite to get a majority of the carries, being the starting running back in sort of this preseason view of the season. I know I like J.J. to eventually take over the starter's job or to significantly contribute to the running game because I just don't envision Lamar Miller as being sort of a workhorse running back. I don't think he's ever been a workhorse running back. But this week there was article that reported that Damian Williams had a better shot at potentially getting the second running back job away from J.J., that he's having some issues with plays. So it's sort of a camp story to watch and see how Jay does. I think he'll overcome and he'll end up being the second guy. But interestingly, Keith, Lamar Miller's average ADP is late third round, early fourth round, which I think is way too early for him.
I would agree. I mean, just Miami's offense, just in general. I mean, Ryan Tannehill's been a somewhat decent story in Miami, and Jarvis Landry was be a topic for next week, and everything like that is expected to make all kinds of leaps and bounds and whatnot. But I'm not buying on Miami's offense to trust their running back in fantasy.
Agreed.
Okay. Next up is we talked about Amir Abdullah for Detroit, but does Joique Bell figure in at all into that equation?
It really depends on what his health status is. I mean, all indications are Joique Bell is he's not in good health. He had his 2 off-season surgeries. He is either not practiced or is barely practicing. And I mean, training camp is starting, and there's no indications when Joique Bell is even going to resume practicing. So with the football season, actually about 35 days away, believe it or not, this is not good news.
No, right?
Not good news, especially if he's not in football shape. So with more time that goes by, it is very clear to me that Ameer Abdullah will be the starting running back. And in fact, average ADP for both these guys is in the 6th round, with Ameer Abdullah slightly ahead than Joique Bell. Joique Bell, I have him on my do not draft list. I'm not even going to consider it.
Okay. The Dallas Cowboys running back situation. So there's Joseph Randle, Darren McFadden that they brought over as a free agent. Just looking now that he's a day or two away from practicing, according to NFL.com, and Jason Garrett with a little hamstring tenderness. And if you've tried to draft Darren McFadden before, you are no stranger to watching the injury report for him. So how do you think this breaks out in Dallas? Will Randall be the top guy, or kind of an RBC, or what?
I mean, I think it's going to be an RBC. I think I like Darren McFadden, especially with this kind of an offensive line in front of him.
Right.
Some people think that Joseph Randle will end up getting more touches, maybe let's say 5 more than Darren McFadden, and then they'll even work in their third, Philip Tanner, and maybe with a few touches, and then Darren gets everything. Right now, Joseph Randle is going in the late 3rd round, early 4th rounds, and I think that's still too early for him. And especially with so many question marks out there, Joseph Randle, had opportunities to do some good things last year, and didn't. So, what kind of faith do you put into the running game with the Cowboys with Joseph Randle? Darren McFadden, if you can get him in the 10th, 11th round as your 4th running back, there is so much upside there. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I totally would agree with that. But just when players don't have that one guy that they're going to lean on, it scares the bejesus out of me, Jim. It really does. It just does.
Well, and that's why you got to love Dallas Cowboys passing game this year. It should be just off the hook.
Okay. Devontae Freeman in Atlanta, merit any consideration?
Right now, his ADP is late 8th round, early 9th round. That's where you should probably get him. To me, Tevin Coleman is the guy to have. He's a late 6th rounder, early 7th rounder. He reportedly has some sort of a hamstring injury. It doesn't appear to be severe, meaning he should get back on the field. It's something to monitor, but Devonta Freeman is again another player that had opportunities last year. I don't think capitalized on him. Tevin Coleman had a great Senior Bowl game, was a tremendous rusher, and I think he's just got a lot of upside.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a murky situation there. Speaking of murky situations, the Todd Gurley situation in St. Louis. You and I were talking about during the break by Jeff Fisher saying that Gurley seems to be injured more on the long-term side than anything else. So obviously, to me, I hear that. I want to go grab Trey Mason and then try to grab Gurley later, or do I have that backwards?
Well, here, the concern is if Todd Gurley ends up on the PUP list to start the season, we may not see him. At the earliest would be halfway into the season. And even then, it might take him a couple weeks to sort of get up to speed. And if Trey Mason is still the running back at the time, maybe he's doing so well they don't want to mess that up. And Gurley sort of works in as a second running back. The reality is Jeff Fisher's indication was that their approach to Todd Gurley's injury is they're looking towards the long term. They don't want to rush him back sooner than he needs to. If it's true that he is not going to be playing in week 1, I'd be really careful about drafting Todd Gurley. Obviously, in keeper leagues, you want him, but in just regular old year in, year out fantasy football leagues, he is being drafted way too high at the late 4th round, 5th round. I mean, why would you draft a running back so early that you can't use for half the season or more?
Right.
I mean, it's very, to me, unless he really falls, I'm sort of staying away from him.
Yeah, you can't reach for that. You can't reach for running backs with foot injuries. No, you need to prove to me.
I mean, you get a better value out of Trey Mason, who's going in the late 7th to 8th round.
Yep, that's just sometimes things just don't make sense, Jim. Sometimes they just don't make sense.
I hear you, brother.
All right, can we talk about the Tennessee Titans really quickly?
Absolutely.
Bishop Sankey, we expected decent things from him last year. It didn't really happen. This year, it looks like it's going to be Sankey, McCluster, and then you got the 5th round draft pick, David Cobb. How's that shaking out, do you see?
Well, I like David Cobb. I mean, he showed me a lot in the Senior Bowl. He's a power running back, certainly can run between the tackles. Bishop Sankey had all kinds of opportunities last year to sort of take the reins of the running back position, starting running back position, and just run with it, and he never did. There were even reports during the offseason that he was still having difficulties with some of the blocking schemes, working through those. So, I think this is David Cobb's job to lose. They are both right now 9th round draft picks, with David Cobb slightly ahead of Bishop Sankey. And in the 9th round, I think David Cobb, that's a great value. And that's sort of being at that RB3, high RB4 slot.
Okay. Doug Martin, Tampa Bay. Anything?
Ooh, you would.
Well, he's been injured. Somebody's got to run the ball there.
Well, Lovie Smith indicated that he's our guy. He's the guy. And then you got Charles Sims sort of in the wings. And Charles Sims, I don't think was all that impressive last season. Doug Martin's got a late 6th round, early 7th round ADP, and Charles Sims is more later rounds, like 11, 12, something like that. Doug Martin's kind of a guy I'm not very interested in. Doesn't get me excited. 6th round, if he's your 3rd running back, I suppose. But there's so many other guys I like for their upside. As a third running back, he just doesn't get me excited.
Okay. Some other names that are jumping down this list I'm looking at here. Cincinnati, Gio Bernard. I mean, I know it's Jeremy Hill's show supposedly right now, but Gio Bernard wasn't. It's not too long ago that we were singing the praises of Gio Bernard.
Yeah, I mean, look, Gio Bernard, he's filling a role. He has a change of pace back, passing down, running back. The Bengals their offense will roll through Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill, and then AJ Green. And you want to look at Bernard, and he's sort of a 900 all-purpose yards guy, 6 to 8 TDs, perfect for a flex. Certainly a great 4th option. If you get him as a 4th option, lucky you. And what's even better is if Jeremy Hill goes down to injury, Gio Bernard takes over an offense that is run first. So I like him.
All right. In New York, both teams. I got questions about both teams. Stephen Ridley make an impact with the Jets at all?
If he does, it'll be on passing downs.
Okay. And with the Giants, does Shane Vereen take away anything from Rashad Jennings?
I think he can. There's a camp battle to watch. There have been some positive reports about Rashad Jennings, how he's looked. He's looked healthy. He's looked strong. But Shane Vereen, we all know what he can do in the passing game, and this is a Giants team that should be pass first, I think.
Yeah, especially with the weapons that they have, and we'll talk about the wide receivers next week. I don't want to spoil anything for next week, but.
And here, Rashad Jennings is going in the late 5th, early 6th. Shane Vereen, late 7th, early 8th.
All right. And an offense that no one would really think of, but the running backs performed pretty well last year. Cleveland, Isaiah Crowell or Terrence West?
We just wrote about them. And Isaiah Crowell seems to be the leader of the pack. I know it's Terrence West started off taking first-team reps when they got together for training camp, but that quickly has changed. Crowell seems to me to be the guy that you want to have. I like Duke Johnson, but he's injured his hamstring, and the severity of which I'm not sure. Could be something that is nothing, or it could be something that follows him. You've got Isaiah Crowell going in the 7th to 8th round. I think that's a good place to take him. So that's really great. A flex player or a bench player. Duke Johnson, 8th to 9th. That seems a little too early. And then Terrence West, let's see what happens. I mean, I've heard good things about him, bad things about him. He's a late round pick. I could think of other players I'd rather take in the late rounds, personally.
Have you looked at I'm looking at the offense for the Browns, and I guess we'll talk about them next week. But their wide receivers are their whole wide receiver position. You can describe the group on the roster as the island of misfit toys. It's just,
you could,
and even the quarterback position. But Josh McCown ain't leading anybody. Otto Graham ain't walking through that door, people. He's just not. Frank Gore in Indianapolis. We talked about him during the break really quick. You said it is what it is with him. He is, you get what you see, what you get. Something like that. I butchered that really bad. What you see is what you get, is what you said.
I mean, the Colts they need some semblance of a rushing game in order to take some pressure off of Andrew Luck. And given the cast of characters that they have, I mean, they have a team full of playmakers, each of which will command someone to cover them. And with that having been said, I mean, Andrew Luck should be able to find somebody open on any given play, if not himself.
Yeah.
And that's why I like him as the number one quarterback.
Well, there you have it, folks. Everything you could possibly want to know about fantasy football running backs, but we're afraid to ask. For Jim Sarantias from thefantasygreek.com, follow him on Twitter at thefantasygreek. I am Keith Grieve from 87 Sports Fans. You can find my sports tweets at 87 Sports Fans and the rest of the mayhem at Keith Grieve on Twitter. You'll catch us here every Wednesday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't be afraid to call in with your lineup questions as the season gets closer, folks. Have a great week.
Turn out the lights. The party's over.